sorry. So sorry. There have been technical issues which we were not able to help. First of all, before I start, let me start by saying sorry. Secondly, can you please tell me, am I audible and visible? Give me a thumbs up if I am, please. Then I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened. You will hear the whole behind the scenes story. Hi Anshul, hi Ami girl, hi Anshul, hi Mayank. Yay! Gungun says I'm perfectly audible and visible. So listen, my friends, my champions, I am very sorry. We were really trying to sort out the issue, but sometimes these things happen, right? There are some things which are out of our control, so but better late than never, right? And since y'all are my champions, I am here to tell you a big welcome and also want to give you another small problem that I have. Will y'all help me, please? I'll tell you what my problem issue is. Can you help me? Hi, Mayank. Hi, Vaibhav. Hi, Asha. Hi, everyone. Okay, so listen. Thank you, Gungun, for waiting. We are so proud of all of you. So listen, no, please, I got a little bit of a problem over here. We were able to manage the technical issues, which means that I'm able to be here with you live. But my problem is that because of the technical issues, no, my pen is not working. So you know what, I'm going to take the session for you, but I'm going to take it without writing anything. So instead of me, I want you to take down your own notes. Can you do that for me, please? Right? Hi Kanti, welcome. This is your first class with me. Great, I'm so happy. Hi Gungun. All right. Ma'am, I can write with my finger. I can write with my finger. What will you see? Okay. All right, great. Okay. So listen, I want you for today's session, please, to take notes. All right. Because I can't write because of the technical challenge. Now I had a choice, right? The choice was either to not take the session or to not write. And I didn't want to miss out on my time with you. So I decided to take the session. And I thought my champions will manage anyway because obstacles are there, challenges are there. But we are going to overcome them because we are champions, right? Okay, so without any further ado, let's start with today's chapter, which is land, soil, water, and natural vegetation, right? Now this is a special student for my class 8 students. Last time I had gone live for a session for you where we had done what chapter? We had done resources, which was chapter number 1. Now this chapter, today's chapter, is actually very closely linked to the resources chapter, because from we take notes? Take notes when I'm talking. Adarsh, take a paper, pen and write down your own notes. Okay. Now, what we're going to be doing today is a chapter that is very closely linked to your resources chapter. We are going to be discussing land, soil, water and natural vegetation. Now, if you think about it, okay, all these are all resources, right? So do you remember how we had discussed the resources chapter? We had spoken about what is a resource. Then we had gone and spoken about how resources are getting depleted. And then we had gone and spoken about how to conserve resources, right? So now we're going to do the same thing for each of these. We're going to discuss each of these resources. We're going to then discuss why that resource is getting degraded or depleted. And then we're going to be talking about how to conserve this particular resource, right? Correct? Harsimran, this is a correct question you asked me. If the pen is not working, why are you holding it in your hand? Habit, I think, sometimes. Okay, but since you pointed it out, I'll put it down over here. All right. Avni, you want me to tell you what is a human resource? Well, this I've explained in detail in my session last time. The live session I took last Tuesday. So please make it a point to go and check that session out and you will get to know what a human resource is. Right? Okay. Yes, out of habit. Gungun, correct. Okay. Now, let's move to our first resource for today, which is land. Now, land we know is a very important natural resource. Why is land important? First of all, what is land? Land is that part of the earth that we live on, that we stand on. And if we don't have land, then where will we live? Where will we stand? Right? So if you take a look at the globe or the planet that we have, ours is actually a water planet. 3/4 of the globe is covered with water. 1/4 is covered with land, and that 1/4 is so very important to us. It's a very important natural resource, right? All right. Ritika says, ma'am, forest is a renewable resource or a non-renewable resource. Ritika, why don't you attend my session on resources and you will then understand what is renewable and what is non-renewable, right? Okay. Now, did you know that Earth is 30% land and 70% water? So that's exactly what I told you. 3/4 is water and 1/4 is land, right? And the total area of Earth, which is, like I said, 100%, out of this 1/4 that we are living on, if you see, are we living on the entire 1/4? Are we living on the entire 30%? No, we're not living on the entire 30%, right? So technically, we are living on just 30% of that 30% of land. It's very interesting. 30% of this land, if you take a look at this second image over here, 30% of the 30% that we are living on, which means that 1/4 is densely populated. And 70% of the land that is left out of the available land that we have, that is sparsely populated or is uninhabited. Now, why do you think that some areas are densely populated and some areas are sparsely populated? Can you tell me? I want to know from you. Why are some areas densely populated and some areas sparsely populated? It's quite a common sense question, actually. Why can we live in some areas and why can we not live in some areas? Tell me. No, there is no Menti. Mayank says yes, because of fertile land. Absolutely right. What else? What do you think? Come on, tell me. Due to drought areas, yes, because of topography, because of water availability, because of forests. Absolutely right, my champions. So, if you take a look at it, highly populated areas are the ones which we human beings, we can live on. Why can we live on these areas? Well, because they are plains, and on plains, it's easy for us to construct our houses. It's easy for us to, construct whatever we want to have roads, to have transport systems. So it's very easy for us to settle down in plains because of it being flat. Apart from that, so always we'll see that plains are basically densely populated areas. More densely populated than probably living on a mountain. Like living on a mountain would become very, very difficult, right? So densely populated areas are plains. Also, another factor that affects population density is rivers. So basically, you will find that from the start of civilization, whether you're talking about the Indus Valley civilization or the Egyptian civilization, all these civilizations have actually flourished and thrived around river valleys because water is so very important to us, right? So these are the areas on land which are very densely populated. Now, why are there are some areas, like I said, that are sparsely populated. Why are they sparsely populated? Well, because they could be probably in polar regions, so it's very, very cold out there. You're not able to live there. Imagine going and trying and living with a polar bear. Must be very, very cold. Right? Also, deserts, you can't live in them. It's too hot, extreme temperatures. Then there's low-lying areas. Now, these areas get flooded very fast. Now, constantly, if you're going to be living over there, floods come, your house breaks down. It's not really possible, right? So, people prefer not to live in such areas, or very few people live in such areas, right? Then you have the slopes of mountains. Again, slopes of mountains, it's very difficult to construct something, like I said. So, slopes of mountains are also sparsely populated. Then we have thickly forested areas. Thickly forested areas also very difficult because it's very, it's difficult to sort of cut down that vegetation and actually have a settlement over there. And in fact, in some cases, we should not do that also, right? Okay, correct. The climate is very harsh. Absolutely right. Okay, now let us talk about the factors affecting land use. So we've spoken about population distribution. Now let us talk about land use. One very big important use for land is we need to live on land, right? So why do we use certain areas and what do we use these areas for? I'll come to what we use land for in a little bit, but let's understand the factors that affect land use. So you have two sets of factors that affect land use. One is physical factors or natural factors, and the other is human factors. Let's talk about the physical factors first, okay? Physical factors like topography, which is again the mountains, deserts, etc. You cannot use those for many things, right? So, for example, it's a mountain, you can't really use it for agriculture, or you can't really use it for construction. So that will affect the land use. Kind of soil. Soil definitely affects land use because it is, if the soil is not fertile, like one of you just told me, I think Mayank said it, if the soil is not fertile, how can you settle down over there? How can you get food from there? How can you practice agriculture from there? So that land cannot be used. Then you have climate. If the climate is very extreme, obviously you cannot use that piece of land for agriculture. People cannot settle down over there. So you see, these factors are all interlinked. Then you have minerals. Minerals, again, very important. When there is availability of minerals, we humans, we use minerals for so many things. So if there is a particular land that has minerals, it will be used accordingly, right? So minerals, again are a very important physical factor that affect land use. And our last factor over here is the availability of water. We saw that when there is water available, we can do so many things with it. We can live over there. We can, have our industries over there. So these are the physical factors that affect land use. Right? Now, let's talk about human factors. Right? Now, human factors are factors that we are involved in. So, population, for example, is a human factor. Now, does the amount of population in a particular place affect land use? Can anyone tell me? Does population affect land use in some way? Tell me. Come on. Hi Kavita. Yes, Ritika, it does affect land use. Sumaya says no. Well, Sumaya, it does definitely affect land use, because the fact is that when you have a densely populated area, naturally that area you're going to say, oh, now I have a population over here. Now I'll need houses. So you'll need place to stay. So that is one particular use. Then you will say, oh, now that I have people over there, let me set up factories over here. So that is another particular use, right? So definitely population being present in a particular area will affect the way the land is used. Oh, now I have population over here and now I need to practice agriculture. So yes, it is a factor definitely that affects land use. Apart from that, yes, absolutely, more the people, more the land is used, and what the land is used for also changes when there are people available, right? Okay, then we have technology. Availability of technology is also a very important human factor, because if you have technology in a particular place, you can decide what you want to use that land for, right? So land use is based on physical factors and land use is based on some human factors also. Now, what are the things that we use land for? Well, very obviously, we know land is so important to us, so we use it for agriculture, we use it for building our houses, we use it for, setting up industries, we use it for different things. We use it for construction of roads and transport systems, and of course, a certain certain percentage of the land has to be set aside for forests also, because we know that forests are so important to us. Right? So these are the different ways in which we use land, right? Yes, I saw a message over there says we use technology to utilize land effectively. Very good. Absolutely. Absolutely right. Living, basically mining. Karthik, what is your doubt? Ask me and we'll try and solve it. Okay? Now, for pastures too, absolutely right. Right? Okay. Now that we've understood what land is and how it is used as a resource, let us understand the classification of land. Now, classification of land is very easy peasy. Classification of land is based on, there are two broad categories. One is, we are basically classifying it on the basis of ownership. Okay, who owns this land? So, in terms of ownership, we have two categories, which is private land. Now, private land is owned by individuals, right? It's privately owned. It's individuals that own this. The government has nothing to do with it, right? So, you have examples of private land would be your own personal house or your own personal farm or something like that, right? This is individual property, or basically it's private land. Then the other categorization is community land. Community land is that land which is sort of used by everyone in that particular community. So, for example, if you live in a particular area and there's a community park over there, everybody in that community or that society or that, neighborhood can go ahead and use that park. Or everybody, if, in some places they have wells, and that's the community well, which means everyone over there can go ahead and, use that community well. So basically we are saying that land is community land. You could have it in the form of parks, you could have it in the form of, community forests, where you have the tribals that can go and, get their resources from there. So this is two distinctions or two classifications: private land and community land. Okay, clear so far? Now, Correct, Ritika. Community land is also used for the collection of fruits, fodder, etc., which means all the tribals or all the people who live around that area can go ahead and use this land to collect their resources, right? Anurag, are you telling me that I'm ignoring you? No, I can never. Sometimes it's a little difficult for me to pay attention to all the comments. That's it, all right? Okay, now, we've spoken about land as a resource. That moves us to our next topic, which is degradation of land. Like I told you in the resources chapter last time, there are resources, there's depletion of resources, and there's conservation of resources. Similarly, for land, we've spoken about land. Now we're going to talk about how is land getting degraded. So how is land getting degraded? Now, I'm going to use this pen again to try and point out things to you, because I realize I'm using it to point things out to you. Okay, all right. Now, ways that land is getting degraded or we're losing this very important resource is number one, soil erosion. What is soil erosion? What is the meaning of deterioration? Devinder, deterioration means that it's becoming bad, or the quality of something is becoming bad or going down, and this is what is happening to land as a resource. It's getting deteriorated, it's getting degraded, and we're losing our valuable resource. Right? Okay, now tell me, what is soil erosion? Who can tell me what is soil erosion? Soil erosion is actually one very important way that our land is getting degraded. Absolutely right. Information converted into knowledge. Hey, that's a nice name. It is the removal of the top soil. Absolutely right. Now, when the top layer of soil is removed, as Bhavya says and Mayank says, our land is getting degraded because we cannot use that land. No, we can't use it for agriculture. If we can't use it for agriculture, where will we get our food from? And we already know that there's so limited land. So soil erosion is a very, very important part of land degradation. Apart from that, there is desertification. Now, what is desertification? Desertification is basically drying up of land. Now, this could happen naturally because of some natural factors like, when there's no water available or when there are droughts. But in terms of us human beings, we really are over-exploiting the land. So what do we do in some areas? We are mining certain areas. We are practicing so much agriculture in certain areas. The soil is losing its fertility. The soil loses its fertility. It starts cracking up like this. So you see, we, because of our actions, are actually desertifying land, which is not a good thing, because then we cannot use that land anymore, right? So this is basically a problem. Yes, it is basically dried land. Absolutely right. Then the third way is landslides. Now, landslides is basically when you have the movement of land. Generally, landslides, as you can see in the picture, happens on slopes. So this is the movement of rocks and soils and actually shifting of land down the slope. Again, this could happen because of various reasons. It could happen because of practicing agriculture the wrong way. It could happen because of construction of roads. It could happen because we're over-exploiting the land, right? We're mining in the wrong places. So as a result, what happens? That land is moving, the soil is moving, and you have a large mass of land that falls, and then we can't really do anything. And this is the way it gets degraded also, right? Yes, landslides are also caused because of deforestation. Absolutely right. So you see how careless we are as human beings, how much we overexploit the resources that we have, right? So this is something to learn. Okay, yes, all of you, absolutely right. Intense blasting, absolutely right. This is a way that landslides occur. Right? Ma'am, I have a doubt. Degradation and deterioration are equal or different? It means the same thing, Devendra. When you're talking about deterioration, you mean quality is going down. When you're talking about degrading, that is also quality going down. So it's the same thing. Right? Okay. Now, let's move on to how we can conserve land as a resource. So there are 4 ways that we can conserve land as a resource. Number 1, afforestation. What is the meaning of afforestation? Come on. This is a very easy peasy chapter. You all can only tell me, what is the meaning of afforestation? Ma'am says, yes, ma'am, I planted 14 trees on my birthday. Yay, you did afforestation. All right. Yes, Gun. Planting trees. Annie, what is your doubt? Put your doubt in and I will try and I will solve that doubt for you. Yes, afforestation means planting more trees. Right, Mayank? Right, Harsimran? Right, Advika? Good, correct. And how does afforestation help? If you plant more trees, the roots of that tree will go and hold on to the soil, and then definitely it will not allow soil erosion, right? So afforestation is very, very helpful. Then we have land restoration. Land restoration is basically about restoring land as a resource. So how can we do this? So sometimes what we do is that, when you have a piece of land that you've used for, too much, for example, you've been using it for practicing agriculture, and you're going on and going on again and again and again using it. What we sometimes need to do is to give that land a rest. Means do not practice agriculture on this at all. When you don't practice agriculture on it, you're giving the chance to the land to sort of replenish itself. It'll get back its minerals, the soil will get back its fertility, and this is called land restoration, right? So basically, if we don't overuse that land, we let it rest for a little bit, we will be able to restore our land. Right? Now, is afforestation and reforestation the same? Well, they are interconnected terms, Manya. Reforestation is basically planting entire forests again, whereas afforestation, yes, is also planting trees. So it's sort of a similar concept, right? Okay. Now, next one is regulated use of chemical fertilizers. Now, this is again very important because we know that chemical fertilizers are so toxic, are so poisonous that they actually kill the fertility of the soil. They kill the fertility of the land, right? Now, soil is a part of land. We will be discussing soil as a separate resource, but the fact is that soil is a part of land, right? So, when you're using all these strong chemicals, they are poisonous, and this actually kills the fertility of the soil. So, if we were to switch to organic materials, or organic fertilizers like humus, or or like cow dung, or whatever it is, organic materials, we will give the chance to the soil to sort of replenish itself, and the land will then restore itself. Right? Then we have restriction on overgrazing. Now, restriction on overgrazing, somebody just told me that land use we need for pastures also. Now, sometimes what happens is in these pastures, we keep taking the cattle to that same spot of land to eat, and they keep eventually eating the vegetation that is on that particular land, and eventually leaves that land completely barren of any sort of fertility. There is no other word. You can't really use that land, right? So you need to then control overgrazing also. Right? Okay, yes. And also the useful organisms that actually help to replenish the land, to help replenish the soil. Right? Okay. Now, let us go ahead and let us talk about our next natural resource, which is soil. Now, actually, a lot of the points for soil are actually sort of interconnecting with land, because soil is a part of land, but we'll quickly skim through it in any case. Right? Okay, so let's talk about soil. Now, is soil only the top layer of the earth? Is it as simple as that? Or is there something more to it? I mean, if you were to actually zoom into the soil that you see, this upper crust of the earth, what would you find? Would you find that it's just one layer? No. Soil has many layers. If you see over here in this picture, there are so many layers. There are 4 layers of soil. So, the topmost layer of the soil is called the topsoil. Now, this is the most fertile layer of the soil. This is the one that has the humus. This is the one where the vegetation grows. This is the one that we need and is so important for us in terms of, our food. Correct? This is your first layer. Your second layer, as you can see over there, is your subsoil. Now, subsoil is a combination of sand, silt, and clay. Right? Then below that is the weathered rock material. Weathered basically means broken down. Okay? So, this is the third layer. And then the last layer is what we call the parent rock. Now, this is the one that's actually responsible for giving us soil, which we will be talking about in a little bit of time. Okay, so these are the 4 layers, right? And as you go higher and higher and higher, the soil starts becoming, it starts becoming finer and finer and finer. And the topmost is the finest layer. It's the most fertile layer of soil. So, like I said, it's not just one layer. It's not just, soil, you find it on top of the earth and then that's it. No, there's a lot more to soil, right? This is this life-giving force that we have that we really need to take care of. in fact, talking about life-giving, it is such an important resource. Did you know that when we're talking about soil formation, it's such an important resource and it actually takes so long to form soil. 1 centimeter of soil can take up to hundreds of years to form. So this is why we need to be so careful of this, right? And then if you take a look at this is very interesting fact. I found it very, very interesting. If you take 1 teaspoon of soil, you will find that 1 teaspoon of soil has more organisms than there are people on this earth. Can you believe that? And that is how much life soil has. And that is the kind of life that soil generates, right? So soil is very, very important. Yes, Manya, I liked this fact a lot myself too. All right. Okay, let's move on. And now let us talk a little bit about how soil is formed. Okay, this is again a very interesting way as to how soil is formed. We already know, I just told you that it takes hundreds of years to get formed. So what are the factors that affect soil formation, right? Factors that affect soil formation is, number 1, we have parent rock. Number 2, we have climate. Number 3, we have relief. Number 4, we have flora and fauna. And number 5, we have time. Now, this is very important. Let me explain this very quickly. How is parent rock a factor in soil formation? Well, parent rock is very, very important because if you don't have the parent rock, where will you get the soil from? You're getting the soil because the soil is the breaking down or the weathering of the parent rock. It is the process of weathering or the breaking down of the parent rock that gives us soil. So this is very, very important. The parent rock is a huge factor in soil formation. Karthik, what is your doubt? Hi Disha, how are you? Of course, I remember you very, very well. Karthik, what is your doubt? Put it down. I will try and answer it for you. Okay. Second, so parent rock is a factor. Then we have climate. Okay. The soil will contain some minerals, same minerals as the parent rock. Absolutely. So it is a factor in terms of soil formation. Absolutely correct. Then we have climate. Climate is very, very important. Also, let me tell you in terms of parent rock, how does the parent rock create soil? We didn't talk about that at all. When this parent rock is, sort of subjected to temperature changes, this parent rock starts changing. When it's very, very hot, the parent rock expands. When it cools down, the parent rock contracts. And because of this expansion, contraction, what starts happening? You start having cracks in the parent rock. And then the parent rock starts breaking or starts getting weathered. And this is how parent rock is also a huge factor in soil formation. Next, we have climate. Now, climate obviously, logically, is very, very important because climate is what gives us the temperature changes, and temperature changes is what causes the weathering of the rock. So, if you don't have the correct type of climate to weather down that rock material, you won't get soil, right? So, climate is very, very important. Extreme temperatures will change that, cause the rock to sort of expand and contract, like I said, right? Then we have relief. Now, relief is basically slope. Now, the fact over here is how do slopes affect soil formation? See, I just told you that soil formation is dependent on the weathering of rocks. Now, let us assume that we have a slope over here. As the parent rock starts getting weathered and particles of, rocks start falling down, what is going to happen? These rocks are going to fall down the slope, right? So, obviously, on the slope, you're going to have a thinner deposit of soil, not very thick. Whereas, all these rock particles and all the soil will go and get accumulated at the bottom of the slope. So, they are going to have a thicker formation of soil, right? So, this way, relief or slope definitely affects soil formation. Then we move into flora and fauna. Flora and fauna is also very important for soil formation. How? Because in this soil, you have so many different organisms. We spoke about more organisms than people there are on earth. I just told you this sometime back. You have vegetation that is growing over here. These living organisms, they live, they go through their cycle of life, they die. Once they die, they decompose. As they decompose, they make the soil more fertile. So you see, flora and fauna is also very important in terms of soil formation, right? Hi, Arpita. Okay, then we have time. Now, Time is basically very important also, because the more amount of time, the more the amount of weathering. The more the amount of weathering, the more the soil formation. So time is also very important. Karthik, what is your question? I've not seen your question at all. You're going on asking me to answer your question, but I can't find your question anywhere, right? Oh, he's asking what is degradation? Yes, degradation, I explained this before. Thank you, Disha, for clarifying what Karthik was asking. Karthik, degradation means lowering of the quality. Deterioration also means the same thing. When the quality of soil goes down, it is called degradation, or quality of the land goes down, it is called degradation. So thank you, Disha, for repeating his question, and thank you, Disha, for helping me out with the answer also. Right? Okay, now with that, let us move on to the factors of degradation of soil, talking about degradation. Okay, so there are two sets of factors that lead to soil degradation. One is the human factors and one is the natural factors. Now, natural factors are those factors that we can't do much about. So, for example, you have soil erosion. Soil erosion happens because of natural factors like running water, blowing wind. So, for example, you have soil degradation, that soil erosion that happens as a result of natural factors. Apart from that, you have things like drought. Now, drought, for example, is drying up the land. Desertification of the land happens. So as a result, the soil loses its fertility and the soil gets degraded. Then you have landslides. Again, when landslides happen, it takes away the top layer of the soil. What you're left with is not fertile at all. Right? And then you have floods. Again, running water. Running water has removed the topsoil, leaving the soil not very fertile. Now, these are the natural factors. What are the human factors? Human beings, we always do something to overexploit and spoil the quality, right? So what are the things that we are doing that are affecting the soil? How are we degrading the quality of our soil? Well, we are first of all doing deforestation. Deforestation means that we are cutting out huge patches of forest, and we are not giving the, we are not allowing the plants to hold on to the soil. So we just discussed how do we sort of conserve land. We discussed this a little bit earlier in the session. Afforestation helps. So what are we doing? Deforestation is the opposite. We're cutting down forests. So as a result, we're losing such an important resource, right? Zeal Creator says, what is landslides? Zeal Creators, I have explained this a little earlier in the session. I request you to please go ahead and watch the video again, right? Land reclamation is basically claiming land from the sea. Okay. Now, let's move on to overgrazing. Again, overgrazing is something that we have discussed before. The soil loses its fertility when the cattle keep going to that same pasture again and again and again. So we're not giving the chance to soil to sort of replenish itself. Right? And then we have overuse of chemical fertilizers, which again we've discussed in land also. When we use chemical fertilizers, it spoils the quality of the soil, and not only that, it actually goes down and spoils the quality of the groundwater also, which we will discuss later. Right? So overall, overuse of chemical fertilizers is definitely something that is degrading the soil. We need to start using more organic material. Right? Okay, now let us talk about soil conservation. So we've spoken about how it is getting degraded. Now let us talk about how to conserve soil. So there are different areas in which we have different methods of conserving soil. Let's first talk about mountain slopes. Now there are two measures in which we can conserve soil in mountain slopes. Number one, contour barriers. What are contour barriers? Let's say that you have, can you see the picture over here? You can see that there is basically a slope that is coming down right over there, okay? And then you have contour barriers that are made out of rocks, stones, etc. that are placed along the same altitude at different levels. How does this help? Because you're creating a barrier of stones. So when you have the running water that comes down, the running water is not taking away a lot of the soil. It will hit the contour barrier, then it will stop. Then again it will go down, it will stop. And what they do for contour barriers is just in front of the contour barriers, they dig trenches. So what happens is when this running water is coming down, first of all, it slows down the speed of the water. Secondly, that water goes and collects in these trenches, and then that water can be used for other purposes like agriculture or other things, right? So this is contour barriers. Then we move to terrace farming. What is terrace farming? Terrace farming is a way of farming or a way of agriculture that we practice on slopes. So what we do over there, we carve out broad, flat terraces which are like steps. Now what is happening again over here, if you have a direct mountain slope and water goes down, a lot of soil goes with it. But if you have steps, okay, and then you have the water flowing down, what is going to happen? The water is going to go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. And as a result, less speed of water means less soil erosion, right? So terrace farming is again a very good method of conserving soil in mountain areas, right? Anurag, mulching. Okay, mulching is basically contour barriers. Shashikala is nothing but building contours or small wall type structures made out of rock or stone which act like as a block for the water. So when you have the water coming down on the mountain, it'll hit the contour barrier and it'll slow down its speed. It's as simple as that. All these things that we do is basically to slow down the wind or slow down the water, because wind and running water are the main natural causes of soil erosion, right? Okay, now let's talk about the plain areas too. Now in plain areas, we have something called mulching. I'm just coming to that, Shashikala. Somebody asked me what mulching means. Mulching basically means that what we're doing is creating a barrier between the soil and the atmosphere. So what we're doing is using organic material like straw, hay, all these sort of organic materials, and we're putting it on top of the soil. How does this help? Well, it helps to retain the moisture, it helps to retain the fertility of the soil, and apart from that, it forms a barrier between the soil and the atmospheric forces such as running water or wind, and this way we are actually protecting the soil, right? And then the next one is intercropping. Intercropping, Gungun says, is beautiful. Yes, I think so too. Intercropping is a great method actually for conserving soil on plains. It basically means planting alternate crops in different rows. So one type of crop, then another type of crop, then another type of crop, then another type of crop, as you can see in the picture. So alternate. Right now, what is the benefit of this? The benefit of this is that when you are intercropping, you're sort of planting two crops that are balancing each other out, that are helping each other out. So for example, there may be one particular plant that gives nitrogen, and there's another type of plant that may be taking nitrogen. So as a result, there's a balance, right? Whereas if you plant only one type of crop, that particular crop is just, eating away at the fertility of the soil, and then you're depleting that soil. So intercropping is actually a beautiful method, right? Okay, let's move on to prevention of soil erosion in dry and coastal areas. Dry and coastal areas, what we do is we grow shelter belts. So what are shelter belts? Is basically like a wall of trees. So what happens with this is the wind in the dry areas, the wind is very, very fast. If you build a wall of trees, that wind will come and it will hit the wall of trees and it will not take the soil away with it. And this is what we mean by a shelter belt, right? Okay, so that's that. With that, we move on to our next resource, which is water. Right? So water is very, 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 very important. Water is a renewable natural resource, but we have to be very careful with it. I'll come to it in a little bit of time. I've already mentioned this when we were talking about land. On our planet, nearly 3/4 of the planet is covered with water. Only 1/4 is land. So technically, we are a water planet. In fact, if you see water from space, if you see our planet from space, it looks blue because of the amount of water we have. And this is why water it's basically covering most of Earth's surface, right? Yes, 3/4 of Earth is covered with water. Absolutely right. Depletion means getting over, Ritika. Depletion means that you're making something, you're overusing something, so that thing is getting over or is getting depleted. And if you want to understand what depletion means, a good thing for you to do would be go and watch my session on resources last time. This will give you a full meaning of depletion. Okay, Now, interesting fact. I gave you some interesting facts about soil. Now I'm giving you some interesting facts about water. There are stories or there are theories that prove how did water come to our earth. How do we have so much water on Earth? What brought water to our Earth? Well, there are theories that suggest that comets, which are basically, you know what comets are? Comets are basically made out of water, ice, and when these comets hit the Earth, they bring water along with them and or give water deliveries to Earth according to NASA. So that's quite cool, I think. Imagine, right? A comet hits and then you have water. Wow, I love that idea, right? Okay, now another very interesting fact is that the saltiest water in the world is found in a lake in Antarctica, and this lake is named Don Juan Pond. Don Juan Pond or Don Juan Pond. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's Don Juan Pond, right? Okay, contour meaning Anni. I have already explained before, so I'm not going back to that section. Please watch this video again, right? Okay, now having disclosed our fun facts, let's talk about how water is distributed on Earth and what exactly is the water cycle. Now, I got somebody who said to me that I think water came from rain. Well, let me clarify that doubt for you. Okay, let me explain it when I talk about the water cycle. First of all, we know that our planet is a water planet. Most of the surface of our Earth is covered by water. So let us say that there is 100% water. Okay, supposing we have 100% water. Out of this 100% of water, 97.3% is salty water or sea water or ocean water, which we cannot really use. Right? You cannot drink seawater and you can't really use it for too many purposes. So that water we can't really use. That leaves how much for us? 97.3, 100 minus 97.3 is how much? How much do you think is remaining? 100 minus 97.3 is how much? Come on, tell me. Come on. 100 minus 97.3? 3? No. Well, yes, if you round it off, it will be 3. But what do you think exactly? Yes, Ishika. 2.7%, right? 97.3% we can't use. 2.7% is left for us to use. Out of this 2.7%, most of this water, 2.7%, is inaccessible to us because it's trapped deep underneath the ground or trapped too high on the mountains in form of glaciers. So we can't use this water. We can use only 1% of this 2.7%. So can you imagine we are using such a microscopic amount of what is actually there? So it's so important for us to protect this water. This itself should tell us why we need to conserve water, right? So we are using only 1%. Now, this 1% of water, how is the water use distributed? What are the different purposes that we are using this water for? Well, the largest amount of water goes towards agriculture. We are using 70% of the 1% available to us towards agriculture. 25% is used by industries and only 0.5% is used for domestic purposes. So you see, this is the way the water is distributed. This is the way the water is used, right? Okay. Now that we've understood that, let's move ahead and talk about the water cycle. So, somebody just mentioned to me when I was talking to you all about the comets coming and bringing water. Somebody said, I think we get water on Earth because of rain. Well, no, we do not get water because of rain, because the fact is, let's say that we've got 100% of water that is available to us. Okay, now this 100% of water that is available to us, this quantity of water cannot change. You cannot create new water. But this 100% of water keeps changing its forms. And rain is one of the forms. So it's not bringing water to Earth. It's just that it's changed its form. So for example, we've got a surface of water, whether it's a pond, whether it's a lake, whether it's the sea. Now, when it's very hot, what happens? There is the process of evaporation, which means that the water turns into vapor or gas. Then, as this vapor keeps going up, it reaches the cooler levels of the atmosphere. There's a process called condensation, which is where the vapor becomes droplets of water. And that is what we see as clouds. And then, when these clouds start becoming heavy, lots of water starts accumulating. Then, this condensation becomes precipitation, it falls down as rain. The water falls down as rain, and this is precipitation. So no, rain does not bring water to earth, but yes, it changes its form. It does definitely give us access to water, yes, definitely. But it is not that it's not how water is created on earth, right? Absolutely right, Anurag. Evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. This is the water cycle, and this is how water keeps changing its form, right? Okay, now with that, let us talk about causes of water scarcity. Again, we are overusing water. Why are we doing this to all our resources? How are we degrading or deteriorating the water that we have? We already have so little. We have only literally 1% that is accessible to us. On top of that, what are we doing? We are, contaminating the water, which means that we are causing water pollution. We are, over-exploiting the water by overuse. Okay, I get very excited when I'm talking about this because it's so important to save water. But let's talk about why there is water scarcity. Point number one, there is a variation in precipitation. Now, what do I mean by variation in precipitation? Variation in precipitation means that some areas have a lot of rainfall. Other areas do not have any rainfall at all. Assam has so much rain. Rajasthan has almost no rain. So as a result, some areas have water, some areas do not have water, right? So you see, that is why certain areas have water scarcity. Apart from that, we are contaminating our water. This is point number two. How are we contaminating it? We are polluting the water. When we have our industries, when we have our factories, all the waste that comes out from the industries, we are directly putting into our freshwater sources. Can we use that fresh water if it's got all these toxic, poisonous things in it? No, we cannot. We are polluting the water, right? Then, over-exploitation. Overactive in all mistakes, Gungun says about human beings. Correct. I agree. Okay. Over-exploitation, which means that we're basically overusing. We are using it too much as a resource. Yeah, we should not be doing that, right? Then also as a result, increasing population. More the amount of people, more the amount of needs, more the amount of food that we need. So rising food demands also. So as a result, we are using too much of this already very precious resource and already very scarce resource. Right? Now, let us understand how we can stop water pollution, or what are the measures to check water pollution. Now, water pollution or water contamination is a very important factor that is leading to water scarcity. So, how can we check this? Well, we can, number one, definitely treat the industrial effluents, which means that the waste that is coming out from the factories, treat it first. Make it into a form that doesn't really harm the water, and then take out that waste into the fresh water, so we're not spoiling our fresh water, right? Number two, public awareness. Make the public aware. Tell them when there's a dripping tap, switch it off. Do you know how much water we can save if each person were to just stop their dripping taps? So many liters and liters and liters, hundreds and thousands of liters can actually be saved by just every single person switching off their tap. But for that, we need public awareness, right? Number three, regulating the use of chemical fertilizers. Now, this is something that I mentioned to you even when we were talking about soil. Chemical fertilizers, we are putting them to have our plants grow. Now, those chemicals are going into the soil. From the soil, they're trickling into the groundwater. That water is going down. And along with that water, all the chemicals are going along with that water and basically even harming our groundwater, right? So this is what we definitely need to stop this, because this is a way of contaminating our water. Again, use organic chemicals or pesticides or whatever, which will help our plants to grow, but yet at the same time will not contaminate our groundwater sources, because already there is so less. Okay, now let us conserve water. How can we conserve water? Well, there are some definitely good methods of doing this. Number one, we can use better methods of irrigation. So, for example, in farms or agricultural land, there are canals, and these canals are basically used to irrigate the land. Now, sometimes what happens is there's leaking canals, which means that the water just seeps into different aspects in different parts of the wall of the canal, and we lose a lot of water. So one thing is definitely to make sure that there is no leakage. We sort of line the walls of the canal or the dam properly, so that automatically we're not losing any water because of seepage. Another point is that we don't contaminate that water, we don't pollute that water. So this would be a very important point. Next, we have sprinkler irrigation. Now, sprinkler irrigation as well as drip irrigation are actually very good methods of irrigation because they don't overuse water. Otherwise, actually, we know 70% of our use of water is to agriculture. If we over irrigate, we're not really helping the plants and we're losing water also. So, sprinkler irrigation is a method of irrigation which doesn't use too much water. Even drip irrigation is where they have drip by drip or trickle by trickle. They basically, help the water to go into the soil, and this doesn't waste much water. So these systems of irrigation are very, very important, and they're very good also. Sprinkler system is so beautiful. Sprinkle irrigation works on tea leaves, absolutely right. Ritika says water harvesting. Yes, I'm just coming to that. Water harvesting is a very important method of conservation of water. So number one, you have surface runoff harvesting. Surface water, instead of letting it, just run off and going to no use, you can collect that water and use it for other purposes. Same for rainwater rooftop harvesting. So when the water comes down the roof, instead of just letting it, go waste, have some sort of thing to collect this rainwater, and then this water can be reused. And this is what is meant by water harvesting, whether it is from the rooftop or whether it is on the surface, right? Yes, Ritika, water harvesting, correct. Okay, with that we move to our last resource for today, which is natural vegetation and wildlife resources. So what is natural vegetation? Natural vegetation is vegetation that grows without the interference of us human beings. We do not interfere. So for example, what we do for agriculture is not natural vegetation. We are we are planting, or what we grow in our gardens, that is not natural vegetation. But when I'm talking about forests, when vegetation is growing freely, wildly on its own, that is natural vegetation, right? Then we have wildlife. Wildlife includes all animals that we're not domesticating in our homes. So whether it's insects, big animals, birds, reptiles, everything that sort of is out there in the wild in terms of animals, the animal kingdom is all wildlife, right? Hi Akash, welcome. Divya says, hi Tarana Ma'am, I'm a big fan. I understand all your concepts. Thank you, Divya. That's what makes it so satisfying to be a teacher. All right, so how are plants and animals important to us? Well, we cannot count the ways in which plants and animals are important to us and what are the uses that they bring for us human beings. But unfortunately, we human beings, we again, always I say, we overuse things and we don't take care of the beautiful stuff that nature has given us. So there are so many uses of plants. I've just put a few uses over here. So for example, plants, they store underground water. That underground water eventually comes to our use. It produces oxygen. Oxygen is what we breathe, right? Then there is providing food. Now, it gives us food so that we can live, protects the soil. There are so many uses. Similarly, animals give us milk, they give us meat, they give us wool, they give us honey. I mean, they're so important to us, right? Okay, now let us talk about what is the term ecosystem. Ecosystem is basically the interdependence of all living organisms on each other. So for example, we have something called the food chain. Now, you have the producers. Let's say that the producers are the plants, right? Plants are giving us food, right? Then you have the next stage, which is the next level, which is the grasshopper. Now, the grasshopper is feeding on that plant. The grasshopper takes some of the energy from the plant. Then you have a frog that eats the grasshopper. So some of that energy from the grasshopper goes on to the frog. Then you have a snake that eats the frog. So some of the energy from the frog goes on to the snake. Then you have an eagle that eats the snake. So you have some of the energy from the snake going to the eagle. And then what happens is that the eagle dies, eagle decomposes, and that basically goes back into the soil and helps the plant to grow. So you see, it's a beautiful cycle. And each level of this food chain or this ecosystem is dependent on each other. If you remove even one level, okay, it'll mean disaster for the other levels. Because for example, if you had no predators, let's say you have no lions. If there are no lions, you'll have a large quantity of deer roaming around because the lion is not eating the deer. Now you have so much deer running around, they're going to overeat the plants. If you have no plants, how will you have the other things live? So you see, any level, whatever food chain you take a look at, each level is very interdependent on each other. Right? Yes, the food chain starts from the plant, and that is why they are called Anurag producers. Right? Okay. Now, let's quickly talk about the depletion of natural resources. I'm finishing as fast as I can so that you can go and attend your other session. I'm sorry, there's been a bit of a delay because of the technical problem. Now, what are the causes of depletion of natural vegetation? Well, tsunami and landslides, these are natural factors. Tsunami, we know what a tsunami is, we know what a landslide is, and as a result of it, we lose so much vegetation cover because of this, right? Poaching. Poaching is a human conducted activity, and unfortunately it is the illegal hunting down of animals so that we can use various body parts for our own need. Not even our need, it is for our greed. Okay, so this is something that is causing a loss of a lot of animal life, and it's not good. And I keep saying that we humans, we literally use and abuse everything that belongs to nature. So we should not do this. Then we're talking about deforestation. We're cutting down so many forests. Again, this is something that I spoke to you about in terms of soil also. We're cutting down so many forests. Naturally, we're going to lose our natural vegetation, right? Then soil erosion. As a result of soil erosion, which we know is caused by human factors, also by natural factors, as a result of that, we are losing so much natural vegetation, because where will the plants grow if there's no soil? Then we have construction activities. Again, over exploitation of our resources. We are cutting down a huge amount of forests, and parts that can have natural vegetation to construct cities for ourselves. Apart from this, we have forest fires. Forest fires, again, is a huge aspect in terms of losing tons and tons of acres and acres of forest, which then of course means loss of both natural vegetation as well as wildlife, right? Okay. Ma'am, not understand. What did you not understand, Sindhu Bhai? Yes, tsunami is earthquake under the sea. Absolutely right. Correct. Is that what you didn't understand? Well, that answers the question. And now let's talk about methods of conservation. Right? Now, methods of conservation is basically social forestry. Social forestry is nothing but afforestation. Afforestation, we've spoken about planting a lot of trees. So this is social forestry. We're basically converting barren lands into vegetation cover or into forests. And Van Mahotsav is basically, again, it's making the community aware about planting trees and turning it into something like a festival. And something like this will definitely help to conserve our natural vegetation. Right? Then we move on to how can we conserve our wildlife. Number one, the government needs to create more sanctuaries and national parks, which they are doing, which is a great method to produce, to protect our forests. So people cannot go into these areas and conduct any illegal activities. Apart from that, they have an agreement with CITES, which is basically an organization which gives us a list of animals that are rare or endangered. And as a result, we can actually protect these animals. So again, this is a method of conserving our wildlife. And with that, we have finished all our resources. Quick summary. We've spoken about land. We've spoken about areas that are densely populated, sparsely populated. We've spoken about why they're densely populated, sparsely populated. We've spoken about land degradation, how it gets spoiled. We've spoken about the classification of land, private and community land. We've spoken about the conservation of land, which is afforestation, land restoration, control on grazing. Then we move on to soil. We spoke about soil as an important resource. We spoke about the various different layers of soil, topsoil, subsoil, weathered rock material, parent rock. I'm going really, really fast, okay? We spoke about how soil is formed, what are the factors that affect soil formation, 5 factors which we discussed. Then we spoke about soil degradation, how are we spoiling or depleting or deteriorating the soil. And then we have conservation of soil. We spoke about conservation of soils on mountain slopes. We spoke about it in terms of plains, and we also spoke about it in terms of dry areas. Right? Then we move on to water. We spoke about what is the water, what is water. We spoke about the water cycle, which is evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and how water is distributed on earth because of these 3 processes. We spoke about the factors leading to water scarcity, which is variation in precipitation, water contamination, and increasing population. And we spoke about water conservation, which is basically water harvesting, sprinkle irrigation, as well as drip irrigation, and even lining our water canals, right? And then we spoke about natural vegetation, uses of plants, uses of animals. Then we spoke about what is the loss, why do we have forest loss and wildlife loss, and how we can conserve the same. And with that, we have finished our session for today. Quickly, for all those of you who have not signed up for BST, click on the link and take this scholarship test. It'll give you a chance to fly to Australia. Apart from this, the BYJU'S mini learning program is now free for the first 500 users. Click on the link and type in the code YTFREE and you will get the offer completely free. And this is it from me today. Sign up or subscribe to the 6 to 8 channel. You will find lots of sessions here. Once again, I'm very sorry for this delay, but बड़ी देशों में छोटी बातें होती रहती है. So I'm going to see you really soon. Definitely remember to like, share and subscribe. Okay? All right then. See you next time. Bye-bye.